Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Strategic Planning Committee today. All our members of the committee are here, or apart from Councillor Thompson, we think he may have sent apologies, so we'll record those if he's not able to come. Minutes of the previous meeting. Is everyone happy with those? Can we move them as a correct record? Yep. Okay. Item 3, declarations of interest and lobbying. We'll go around if anyone's got anything to declare. Councillor Sokol, start with you.
Chair, item 9 wasn't part of the decision on the last committee meeting. I'm not sure I can vote or not today on this item.
I think you can, yeah.
You
do you want to switch your microphone? Are you happy that you can consider the issue with an open mind and you haven't already made a decision? Then it's your decision whether or not you want to withdraw and not take part. But if you're happy that you can say that, then that's part of your consideration. If that helps.
Non-chair.
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 Yep, none from me either. Okay, item 4, admission of the public. It's a public meeting. We're on the webcast and we've got some people here. Members of the public are people to make representations. Item 5, public question time. I don't think we've got any.
No questions.
No,
Chair.
and deputations and petitions.
No
we've not got.
deputations or petitions.
That's fine. So we'll go straight on to the planning applications. We have undertaken a site visit this morning for one of the applications, so we've completed that. So we'll go to item 9 first. So this is the Haybeck Lane Chidswell one. So I'll hand to you, Victor.
Thank you, Chair. Victor Grayson, Development Management Master Planner in the Majors and Minerals team. Before members today is a short report relating to an application that was considered at the last meeting of this committee in December, where members resolved to refuse outline planning permission for a residential development of up to 181 dwellings. Members will recall that this application relates to the smaller part, or the Haybeck Lane or Site A part of the MXS7 allocated site at Chidswell, shown here. This slide shows the text of the reason for refusal which was drafted at that last committee meeting, albeit now with changes recommended by officers. This text, members, is also at paragraph 2.1 of the committee report. This committee delegated authority to officers to make minor amendments to the precise wording of the reason for refusal if necessary. That was considered appropriate given the reason for refusal was drafted quickly on the spot at December's meeting. And minor amendments are now recommended. These are shown in red here. On their own, these wouldn't have necessitated bringing this application back to committee, officers think, subject to Chair's agreement, because these amendments are minor. And they are recommended because they would ensure the reason for refusal reads better, and the addition of the words nearby and together clarifies the concerns and would enable the Council to make an argument at appeal regarding cumulative impacts. However, a further amendment is also now recommended. This is shown in blue and relates to the hydrological impacts of the development. Members will recall that representations suggested that much of the developed application site would be covered with impermeable surfaces, so less surface water would soak into the ground, and as a consequence, recharging of groundwater would be slowed or reduced, and the adjacent ground will become drier, and as a consequence of that, the ancient woodland and its biodiversity would be harmed. Officers recommend that this element be deleted from the reason for refusal, and as this would remove an element of the refusal that members had understood would be included, it is necessary to bring this matter back to committee for members to consider. The reasons for this recommended deletion are listed at paragraph 2.5 of the committee report. The primary reason for the recommended deletion relates to evidence, and as Matthias explained at the last meeting, if this application went to appeal following refusal, which we think is highly likely to happen, the Council would need to present evidence to support its refusal on hydrological impact grounds. There is, however, no such evidence available. Although these impacts were referred to in representations, no consultees, objectors or other parties provided modelling or other clear evidence to demonstrate that such impacts would occur. Secondly, the applicant, in a technical response received on the 17th of November last year, has convincingly argued that the development is unlikely to alter the current regime for groundwater recharge and groundwater flows. This is believable given the direct contribution of rainfall to groundwater recharge would be limited, given surface water runoff would largely comprise flow to the nearby watercourses, and given the permeable surfaces that will be provided within the developed site and in the form of the 1.5 hectare buffer proposed between the development and Dunwood shown here. Furthermore, prior to the previous committee meeting, the Woodland Trust confirmed that the applicant's technical response addressed their concerns relating to hydrology. And finally, as noted in the committee report, government guidance and the Woodland Trust's own guidance notes that changes to hydrology can harm ancient woodland, but it does not illustrate harmful scenarios that are directly comparable with the relationship between the Haybeck Lane site and Dunwood. So, while other elements of the reason for refusal would be retained regarding the insufficient depth of the proposed ancient woodland buffer, the significant intensification in the use of Dunwood, and the resultant unacceptable harm to and deterioration of the ancient woodland, it is recommended that the element regarding hydrological impacts be omitted. If the recommended amendments are accepted by members, officers would issue the Council's refusal using the reason for refusal set out at paragraph 2.8 of the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Members, we have no speakers on this, so go straight to you. Okay, Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chair. It was a bit of a strange one. I'm going to ask some questions on this because I'm seriously concerned, because I think for the public out there, we've already decided this application, and what's not acceptable was the causes and the harm that we were saying was a detrimental impact. That's why, revisiting the wording, I just want to ask why the hydrological word would be removed when on the ancient woodland policy it refers to, it's not just about certain things, it's about soil, water, root, microclimate, not just about footfall. And what's really worrying me now, this element, you remove that out, we'll be talking about footfall, which can be mitigated at appeal. So I'm in mind to say, keep the wording as it is. However, I want to hear what my other colleagues are saying, because I've also scripted some other wording that we might be able to accept.
Okay, does anybody else have any comments before we go back on that? Okay, yeah, Councillor Pinnett.
Sorry. I tend to agree with what Councillor Scott is saying. I hear what officers have suggested, but I just wonder whether that would make all that much difference to having to defend an appeal. It's Councillor Scott's point that there are all sorts of reasons that effect could be made on Dunwood, and if you leave, there is a danger that if you leave that out, then it might not be considered. I mean, this does specifically talk about hydrological. I mean, maybe we ought to say hydrological and other impacts, because as Councillor Scott has said, there are other things, including people walking through the wood, perhaps, and maybe that would be a compromise if we change the wording in that way, so that we as members of the committee are still emphasising the hydrological impacts, but saying that there are others as well, so that there's kind of removes the danger of concentrating on that alone. I don't know. I'll see what other colleagues say.
Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Chair. I'm open to correction on this, but my understanding is that an appeal could be upheld on one point but denied on a separate point. So I don't see the problem with including the effects on water dynamics. I'm not going to try and say hydrological. So I don't quite see the reason for striking that out, because I don't see it as being detrimental to the case. Take advice.
What I would say is that the first thing that we've got to do as a committee is make correct decisions based on planning, policy and facts, right? So it isn't a good argument to say we'll keep it in because does it really harm, the defence? Still another reason for refusal. So we need to think about whether the reason that we've given is a valid reason for refusal. And I think what the officers are just gently pointing out to us is that this report was done as required by the applicant. Based on expertise, the view is that that answers that question. And not only that, one of the main objectors also agreed with that assessment. So I think it's about making an accurate decision. And also, I mean, I don't want to go too far into it, but obviously if something is appealed and there's lots of reasons for that refusal happening, then of course lots of work has to go in on both sides that costs a lot of money to evidence those different things. And if that isn't actually a valid reason, what you end up doing is creating a lot of additional work both at our side and for an applicant to refuse it, and then of course costs come into that. So I think that's part of the reason. So I think we should focus on whether it's the right planning decision, and if members think that that is still the right decision after officers' recommendation, then that's up to the committee, but that's the rationale and we need to think of it in those terms. You want to come back in, Councillor Scott?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but we're talking about community detrimental impact on an area, and we've looked at that, and it's not about the cost and value and what it'll cost on appeal. This committee made a decision, and the decision, as far as I'm concerned, is if the wording was to change, I feel, because I've gone through it and gone over it, will weaken the council position if it went to appeal. And that's how I feel. I am not a legal person. I don't know if I'm right. But I think by keeping hydrological wording in is the right way to go. I did write some of the words as I was sat down there at dinner time today to say that we could use maybe a little bit, tweak it slightly. However, I just think that if we strike it out, we're making a rod for our own back as this council. It will weaken this case. And I don't know if you want to bring somebody else.
Yeah,
who's got
I'll bring,
expertise,
Matthias would like to
we
come
made
in,
a
so-
decision.
Yeah, I'll let Matthias come in on that.
Thank you, Chair. And I hear you, Councillor Scott. And for the audience, both in the room and externally, you have refused this planning application. It is going to be refused. It's as simple as that. On the specific point of appeal fighting, being precise, as the Chair has set out, is better than throwing the kitchen sink at it, which is everything that you can think of, when the reality is the evidence that you can articulate, both in the now and at an appeal, it doesn't exist on this hydrological point from our perspective. Therefore, you're acting unreasonably. And I wouldn't have a position to defend that point at appeal. So in effect, at an appeal, I would say to my officers, we can defend the wording that we've set out to members, and even if it contained the hydrological element, I wouldn't be able to offer up an argument for that, and a planning inspector would do what the Chair has set out and said, well, you haven't got a reason, you haven't got an evidence to support it, you haven't been precise. Even if he dismisses the appeal, i.e. continues to refuse the permission, he could still award costs against the council on that point for putting the applicant and others to unreasonable expense. It doesn't look fair to go at everything. And the reason that we're here today, as the Chair and Victor have articulated, is you are going to refuse it. We are going to have an appeal. We're probably going to have a public inquiry in all likelihood, given the scale of the development, and that is purely down to evidence that articulates why the reason is reasonable. I want to reinforce, we will fight the appeal, but we won't be able to fight on that point, even if it's in there. So to me, if you take it out now, you're narrowing our case to what we think you can have a good go at defending, a fair go at defending. And just on a technical point, the plan was up before. This is an outline planning application. You do not know, as a committee, with all certainty, that the roads and the houses on that indicative plan are where they're going to be, or the way that the site is going to be drained is exactly what the outline shows you. It's informative, it's indicative. A planning inspector's just going to turn to you and say, you haven't got certainty, and the evidence is pointing away from a hydrological impact on that woodland. You've acted unreasonably. In the end, you're the committee. You decide what words you want to go in. I just wanted to try and set that as what we're going to do. We're going to do our best for you, whatever you tell us to do. All right. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Pinnock.
Point of clarity. If we approve the wording that you have suggested, there is nothing to stop people promoting this appeal from introducing whatever issues that seem to them to be the correct ones, the ones that are relevant, even if hydrological impacts are not mentioned in there. There's nothing to stop the appellants from introducing that in ways that yeah.
Yes, and there's another dimension to that, Councillor Pinnock. It's a really good point to raise. At if the appeal is heard through a public inquiry route, interested parties, so not just the council and its reason for refusal, but, for example, residents or action groups who are active in the area, they can apply for something called Rule 6 status, which effectively allows a group of residents, in this example, to attend the public inquiry, having submitted their own proofs and argue on a range of matters. That can be much broader than what the council's case is. And this is quite a common occurrence in modern planning appeals nowadays, where residents will, for example, get together and they'll say, the council's refused an application, for example, just on the impact of the activity associated with being close to a woodland. But we as residents feel that there is harm on grounds such as air quality, for example, hydrology, for example, and then the appellant would have to respond to those concerns as well if that action of Rule 6 status. So there are other ways for this matter to be heard on behalf of the community if they are motivated to do it. But as a council and as a set of officers advising you through our chair, what we've written out in this committee report is what we can go forward and do our best for you on. And hydrology isn't an area for us. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Scott.
Yes, that was more than helpful. So in that case, can I move it, Chair, that we accept the officer's written paragraphs that he's put in, and we go with that?
I'll second.
Okay, we've moved and seconded that. Have you got that, Sheila?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the officer recommendation as set out.
Yeah, okay, we'll vote.
Councillor Sokol?
For.
Councillor Scott?
For.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Lee Richards? For. Councillor Armour?
Or.
Councillor Homewood?
For.
That's carried, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good discussion. So we'll move on to item 10, so I can't find my agenda. Item 10, in Birkinshaw, Blue Hills Farm, White Hall Road West. And hand back over to you, Victor.
Thanks, Chair. Item 10 on today's agenda relates to a discharge of conditions application concerning a retaining wall at a site known as Blue Hills Farm, Birkinshaw, that is currently being developed. The application has been brought to committee at the request of Councillor Smage, member for Birstall and Birkinshaw. The application seeks approval of details pursuant to condition 5 of a previous reserved matters approval. The full text of that condition is set out at paragraph 4.3 of the committee report. Via this application, the applicant, Vistry West Yorkshire, seek approval of the height and the external material of the already built wall along the site's Whitehall Road West frontage, as well as proposed measures, namely planting in front of the wall and the tinting of the wall's grey concrete blocks. The application site is located on the northwest side of the A58, that's Whitehall Road West, close to the M62 embankment. It is a prominent location at the edge of Birkinshaw, seen by many people using the A58 every day. This slide illustrates the construction of the retaining wall that members saw on the site visit this morning. A product named Ready Rock has been used. Ready Rock blocks have been laid in courses, backfill has then been added behind the wall, and the relatively flat plots created behind or above the wall have then been built on. The two sections in this slide illustrate how the height of the wall varies. At its tallest point, which is its south corner, it measures 3.45 metres in height. That's measured from the top of the soil bank at the foot of the wall, which itself rises 1 metre above the level of the adjacent pavement at that point. Therefore, the tallest part of the wall stands at 4.45 metres above pavement level. It then reduces in height as it extends northeastwards. On top of this, an acoustic fence and railings have been erected, and behind these boundary treatments, 12 two-storey affordable dwellings have been erected. As set out in the committee report, the retaining wall was erected in early 2024 prior to a decision being made on an earlier discharge of conditions application. That application was eventually refused in July 2024 due to the wall's materials and height and it not being in keeping with the surrounding character and appearance. The wall is visually obtrusive and over-dominant and gives the development an inappropriate fortified appearance. To address these concerns, under the current application, the applicant proposes two measures. Firstly, soft planting in front of the wall, as illustrated here, and secondly, the tinting of the wall. Regarding the proposed soft landscaping, this has been amended and is now considered appropriate. The proposed species are native. They include an evergreen species and another species that retains its leaves long into winter, and no thorny species are proposed immediately adjacent to the shed, footway and cycleway. In this slide, members, pale shading highlights the planting proposed in front of the wall. Regarding maintenance of the planting, this was already secured under the Development Section 106 agreement, and further confirmation regarding this matter has been provided by the applicant as set out in yesterday's update. This slide and the next slide show the wall at different times of year and under different weather conditions. I should mention, members, the wall in the image on the right has not been tinted. It looks that way in that image because there was, at the time I took the photo, there was low yellowy sunshine that made the wall look less grey in that image. The other images illustrate how the wall appears grey and in some cases streaky in wetter weather and duller conditions. And then in this slide, the image in the bottom left shows the development still under construction. Again, the wall in the image in the top left has not been tinted. However, in the image on the right, we can see some of the blocks that have been tinted. This is a sample panel provided by the applicant to illustrate what the tinting would look like, and members saw that on site this morning. The proposed tinting would involve the application of a potassium silicate solution with an added pigment that would be mixed on site, and that would give the concrete blocks a buff colour to more closely resemble the artificial stone of 5 of the 12 dwellings that have been erected above the retaining wall. And then finally, this image provided by the applicant approximately illustrates what the proposed planting and tinting would look like. I say approximately, members, because the hedge planting proposed in front of the wall would not cover as much of the wall as this image suggests, given that the applicant expects the plants to reach a height of 1.5 metres and given the wall has a maximum height of 4.45 metres above pavement level. But notwithstanding that point, with the planting and tinting now proposed by the applicant, it is considered that the harm currently caused by the retaining wall will be reduced to an acceptable level, such that it is recommended an approval pursuant to condition 5 can now be issued. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So, we've got a couple of people to speak on this. So, Councillor Smage, you're first, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak. So, yeah, feel free to start when you're ready.
Thank you. The Berkshire Wall was built by the developer without permission. I think it must be stressed that it was built without permission. I put some pictures into planning in February 24. There were no houses on top of it. It was being built before the planning application had been decided upon. The report states that the developer is not proposing to build a wall that fits in with the local environment. Of course not. They built the wall without permission, as I've said, and then carried on building without that permission. The wall height is clearly overpowering on this key entrance to the village, and the material that has been used does not fit with the local environment. A simple internet search showed that ready rock could come in different styles, but the use of the material clearly has not been considered so that the development fits in with our environment, something that is part of national planning policy, as stated in the committee report, which states that development should be sympathetic to local character and history, and establish and maintain a strong sense of place, and be a welcome and distinctive place to live, and not a separation between the current environment and the development as is now. It separates from the rest of the area, and so much work has been undertaken to try to make the halfway house area a pleasant gateway into the village, and yet the developers come along and just put this completely out of character. And I could have chosen stronger words, and I chose not to. The application seems to be trying to reduce impact rather than a long-term solution. It depends on the planting taking and then being maintained. The planting does go as part of the way up to the wall, but it doesn't cover the whole of the wall, and the impact of the height at one end of the wall will not be reduced. And I don't know whether you've seen, you might not have this morning, but when the weather has been wet, we already have damp patches that look as the wall looks as if it's got damp patches on it, as if the water is collecting behind it. The application depends on assurances from the developer that the staining will last. It states that that peeling and flaking will be reduced, not that it won't happen. And the wall already has areas of damp, as I've said. Since I queried the management company wording and the Section 106 agreement that didn't seem to incorporate the area outside of the wall, I noticed the supplementary planning update has been submitted. It's just one problem after the other, and that is what I see for the future when this proposal, rather than a wall that works for everybody. It will be there long after the developer has left, and people in Berkshire will have to live with it if this is approved. And that, I think, is completely unfair. I ask that because there are so many variables as to whether this will work, that it is not sustainable into the future, and that a solution that is a more permanent solution and gives us a gateway to the village be put in place that is more in keeping. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the next person to speak we have is Andrew Poyner, who's speaking on behalf of the applicant. Andrew, you have 3 minutes to speak, and there's a clock somewhere that hopefully you can see. Okay, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee. If I may, in the limited time that we've got available, address the points that Councillor has raised both in the conversation a moment ago and in the written report. In terms of the maintenance of the wall, as opposed to a natural stone solution, there will be a less maintenance requirement on the wall. Obviously, both natural stone and the ready rock wall weather in a similar way, as you would expect over time. In terms of landscaping, the landscaping will be maintained and managed by the management company for the development, so at no cost to the council. In terms of the tint on the wall, the maintenance, well, there is no maintenance requirement for the tint. The tint is applied and it will stick with the wall, and it will naturally weather like any other product would do when exposed to the elements. In terms of the suggestion that a planting may undermine the foundation of the ready rock, there is a root barrier to be installed which would protect the ready rock wall from any suggestion that roots would impact on that. In terms of the comment in relation to the gateway into Birkenshaw, and I am a local resident of the area, when you arrive through up to the development, so when you're crossing the flyover from the M62, obviously that face of the wall which Mr. Gratian showed on the photograph, I don't know whether you could, the CGI, whether you could put that back up, please, that the planting scheme for that covers that side of the wall. So in terms of a gateway, it would actually be a green gateway that enters, that you would enter into in terms of a visual impact into Birkenshaw. I'm mindful I've only got 40 seconds, so I think that covers off the majority, if not all, of the points that Councillor raised, both written and in her conversation a moment ago. So, Chair, I've concluded there. Thank you.
Okay, that's all speakers we have, so over to members. Victor, I don't know whether we can just put the visual back up, just so people can see it. Councillor Pinnock first, and then...
Can I start off by just getting, the sort of procedural issues? This is a discharge of conditions application. What is the actual condition, please, that is to be discharged or not? Please, what does it state?
You want to answer that one, Victor, if you can.
Through you, Chair, the full wording of the condition is listed or reiterated in the committee report. I couldn't tell you which paragraph until I open it. 4.3, paragraph 4.3.
Oh, sorry.
I can read it out if it would help.
Well, for those who can't see it.
Okay. So the condition, this is condition 5 of the reserve matters approval. So members will know that at some sites, developers pursue kind of a two-stage way of getting planning permission, first an outline application and then a reserve matters application. The reserve matters approval had this condition 5 that said there shall be no commencement of each phase of the development hereby permitted until the scheme detailing the location and cross-sectional information together with the proposed design and construction details for all new retaining walls, stroke building retaining walls adjacent to the existing stroke proposed highway has first been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority in liaison with the local highway authority. The approved scheme shall be implemented prior to the commencement of the proposed development and thereafter retained during the life of the development.
Thank you. Yes, that's sorry, I'd forgotten that was actually there. That's the point of this application, really, that we have to decide whether that condition has been discharged or not, and of course that includes all sorts of things like its appearance, like its height and breadth, and all sorts of things like that. I mean, personally, I'll be quite honest and say I don't like it. and I'm not sure that the tinting does anything to improve it. But then that's my personal opinion. It's a bit difficult because there are houses already built on top of it, and the question as to what we do if we said no, we are not going to approve the discharge of these conditions, what do we do next? That's the difficult bit. As I say, I don't like what's there. I personally think that the material looks artificial, and even with tinting, it still looks artificial. Whatever colour it is designed to blend with. Cotswold stone, I was thinking maybe, perhaps not. No, definitely not. But it's. I don't know what to do about it. Whether you could replace it with some other material. I mean, that's a high stakes solution. The other alternative would be foliage of one sort or another, which has been partly used, but maybe we need more of it. I don't know. This really emphasises a dilemma that we've got. If we don't like what we see there at the moment, then what are we going to do about it? And that's we could have quite a long discussion about that, but because I'm not proposing anything at the moment, because I'm sure other members of the committee will have, won't they? Will have their own views on the subject. So I'll stop there.
Councillor Armour.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Where to start with this? I think the first thing is I have very little sympathy with developers who jump the gun or preempt conditions or ignore conditions. Very little sympathy with them. They know the rules, they should stick to the rules. They should ensure they've done it stage by stage as required. What's done is done. I don't think it would be reasonable to demolish the wall and hence the houses that have been built above it. Looking at the pictures, and I realise they can be a little bit misleading, but to be honest, a lot of the work looks very, very shoddy to me. I've worked in the building trade. Looks very, very shoddy. It may be there is finished pointing to be done, but it's a mess. In the photographs that we've been shown, it's a mess. It's shoddy. I think it's been done to reduce cost rather than to improve impact. I think the choice of materials is substandard. I think they've gone for cheapness rather than effect. What do we do about it? Well, the only thing I can think of is to face the wall with a more appropriate material, whether natural stone or whatever. Facing it would cost the developer. I've no sympathy for that. They've ignored the rules. They need to put it right. So that would be my approach to it. Thank you.
Councillor Scott first and then you, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I think it has to be acknowledged it is in breach. We know it's in breach. But we're in this situation now. And it's what we're going to do about it. And one of the questions I think the developer did answer about the ongoing maintenance cost. Well, it's not as simple as that, because you'll maintain it for so long and then it falls in the hands of the council to maintain. But one of the things that I was worried about was the foundations and the safety of this wall, how close it was to the footpaths and to the properties. I don't know, because if it's been built without permission, where's the evidence to say it was in a satisfactory foundation position? I don't know, I'm not an expert. So for me, I'd want to know that that we had that evidence that everything was satisfied. I do think there's, like we say, there's a serious breach. I don't think the tinting is acceptable. I don't think it would be in keeping. Different times of the day, that wall looks different colours. I think that's a problem. But it's a monstrosity because it's a gateway into a community or into an area. I'm not satisfied with the proposed mitigations at this moment. There's a lot of things that I don't understand that should have been followed. However, I'm going to give way and allow others to talk about it. But I think we've got to be very careful that we've got mitigation being put in place, trying to take over retrospective. And I think you've got two elements here, that this should not have been built the way it was. And I worry about this committee. Once you allow something, why are we sat here? Why are we sat here? So I'm just going to leave it for a moment because I could be persuaded either way, but yeah.
I'll bring you in, Councillor Sokol, and then I'll come to you.
Thank you, Chair. I was on the site visit this morning while I was far away from approaching the building site. I raised the question, is that wall? Yeah. Yeah, officer said yes, yes. I didn't know where is that the property or wall is there. It's a very prominent location here. It doesn't look nice. It looks horrible, not matching the material with other property around there. I don't know why the developer or builder started build this wall without planning permission of there and ignoring the officers. I know it will cost a lot of money to the builder to rebuild the wall with either or natural stone or so. But again, they have to agree. It's their fault. It's not council's fault or not a resident fault. They have to rectify the looking or putting the wall in a material matching with other buildings. So I'm not happy with that, honestly.
Matthias?
Thank you, members. Okay, where do I start? You've got the images. Just for context, and you are right, it has been built in an unauthorised fashion, therefore the risk is at the developer's expense. To be fair to the developer, and this is a theme in Kirklees, developers work at pace. Once they get their planning permissions and they start on site, they are spending lots of money on risk before they make a return on investment when they sell houses. The council's ability sometimes to keep up with developers and their programme is one of the factors. I'm not justifying, I'm just telling you how things are between the council's approval and developers actually on site. They work faster than sometimes the council can keep up with. We would like to be quicker. I'm sure if they could be slower, they would. And that's sometimes some of the reasons why situations like this arise. And if you look at the image, if you go from right to left as you look at it, you probably think, oh, it's okay. Oh, it gets really stark as you get to the corner. As the highway drops down and the site entrance appears, it becomes very sharp at a sharp point on that bottom left of the image on the street scene drawing you're looking at. So for 2/3 of it, it's probably not the end of the world. It's where it gets sharp and tall on the corner, and that's an open view. And the materials are difficult I absolutely hear that. And I hear some of the ideas you're suggesting around cladding it, and that could be something we could explore. I'm not promising it's achievable, but the idea of a brick slip solution, which I was talking to the chair about previously. So what I would like to understand from the chair and his committee is, are you saying that if we could look again at the finish to make it better quality, because the point was raised, if you refuse it, what are you going to do? Because those houses are occupied. Some of them are affordable and tenure, I understand. So the scheme's doing a lot of good things. The site isn't that easy to bring forward. They've built at pace. The council hasn't, structurally, has approved the foundations of it. So the thing is structurally, from our perspective, sound, which is really reassuring. It's the aesthetics that we're dealing with and the scale. And we don't think we anticipated the scale of that when we granted the planning permission. But as you said, we are where we are. Do you want us to go away and have a conversation again with the developer in light of the concerns you've got about its appearance and get the best we can do, accepting that the painting of it, the tinting, isn't an acceptable solution, you're saying, and recognising that landscaping is as tall as it can be given the depth of soil they are able to plant in? And we'll look again, but you probably are going to have that open relationship in the bottom left-hand corner where the site entrance and the highway meet, and you have effectively a sharp point of roads. So we can do something there, Chair, as best we can with them to look again at cladding it in some appropriate materials. And we probably need to engage with ward councillors to understand whether what they can do is more appropriate than what you've got here. But fundamentally, I don't think you can do much else, Chair. I hope that...
Yeah, thanks. I think just we've got our hands up. I agree with that. My feeling is that the tinting, I'm sceptical about that, just based on what I saw. I mean, it's tinted to match the properties, but the properties are different colours, so it doesn't match the properties. And we see that it changes colour anyway. Presumably it will still change colour with the tinting on. So, yeah, and, you know, actually, you know, okay, when you look at this image, it looks like, you know, you see a lot of vegetation. I'm sceptical as to if that's what would actually look like. So I think if we can look at a way to make accepting the height of the wall, is there a way to make it look more in keeping or just a better quality of design? I think we're definitely going to look at. The only other thing I would say, just thinking about what Councillor Smage said, is that I appreciate that it's probably not within our remit in the planning committee, but I think it would be really interesting to look at this case and see what has gone on here, because my concern is that it's not like last week someone, oh my goodness, someone's built a big wall. This has been going on for a while. It's been reported through to enforcement, and everybody, including the developer, should have been aware at that point that there was an issue that had been raised, and if it should have been dealt with at that point. And so I think both the council and the developers have got an issue to deal with there, and saying something's gone wrong, because it shouldn't have taken to get to this stage where it's all the houses are developed that it's at this committee before it was resolved. So I think something's gone wrong that I think it would be worthwhile us looking at. Just before we move on, just Mr. Poyner, I'm going to bring you in to sort of give a long speech, but based on what Matthias has said, would you be willing to have a discussion on those points?
Yeah, absolutely. Clearly we would, but could I just address a point that's been raised a couple of times in relation to any perceived, developer riding roughshod across a process here? That's simply, it's genuinely not the case. We engaged on this particular issue prior to the decision being made, and we've engaged with the highways team and the planning team since that date. Yes, I would welcome, as Chair suggests, that we look into this collectively about it, but I do, you know, when we come back again to meet, it's not a case of us going off in terms of a rogue developer. We've looked to engage with this. We've come up with solutions. We put different solutions forward which weren't acceptable. This solution is a highways approved scheme. And yeah, absolutely, I reiterate, would welcome a look into that, because, you know, the whole planning application for the scheme took, I believe, circa 15 months. against, we all know, a much shorter statutory period. You know, we are a partnerships business. We're not in it for a quick buck. We develop communities and homes predominantly affordable, and we leave, and we want to leave a lasting legacy. So I would welcome that dialogue. We're not a run-of-the-mill developer. We are a partnerships business that looks to work with the local community. So if that has been lost in translation along the way, I do apologise, but that's not what we do and not what we're about. So I'd welcome the engagement. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Scott, then Councillor Sokol, then Councillor Armour. Yep.
Yeah, I welcome what the developer said and also what Matthias has said. I think we're at a situation, as I said earlier, it's here now. It's what we're going to do effectively. And I think we should delegate it to officers and liaising with ward councillors. And my thoughts are around that block solution. But I also want to know if you could have a look at the moss solution, where some of these walls you can actually put moss on, where it absorbs the lead, it's environmentally friendly, it's cost effective as well, so some kind of solution so it's not it's more green and more effective and wildlife and things like that. I'm just trying to think of solutions because it's here now. So I'm going to move recommendations that officers go, it's delegated to officers working with ward councillors and the developer to go and look at the solution of the betterment of this wall, because it's here. It's not going to come down. It'll be a detrimental impact on the foundations, I think, if it did so. But can we add in, look at that moss solution, because there's a lot of places that use moss now. A lot of places.
Just to clarify, Councillor Scott, because in terms of decision, so we could defer the application and ask officers to do that, or are you saying delegate that so they can approve?
Yeah. I think if you defer it and bring it back, we're just going to be adding, I think we're at it's here now. Deal with it. So.
All I'm saying is if you if we delegate it, the answer to the delegation might be, well, they accept this arrangement that we have now. So that's we'd have to accept that. Do you know what to say? Anyway, I'll come to Councillor Sokol first.
Can we bring Matthias in to see what he thinks on it? If it delegates,
I understand what you're saying.
But I think
come to a better solution.
In goodwill, the developer sat here saying as undertaking, it's well wide, it's cast. You're that undertaking to explore what's right. And I think Matthias explained that earlier.
Councillor Sokol.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I agree with Matthias' suggestion and Chair as well, yours, yeah. But I'm worried about that. The developers failed in the past. They didn't listen to the officers, yeah. I'm happy to go along, go back, give the delegation authority to Officer Bo. In the end, if the developer failed again to take notice of office, what the officers say, what will happen? Will this application come back to committee or no?
I think, to be fair, I think this is why I'm saying that we should think about what happened in this scenario, because I think Matthias has made a point and the applicant has made a point in terms of what's happened, because I think my understanding is that the retaining wall did go through the highways agreement, and I guess there can be confusion about exactly what agreement you need from who and what condition applies to what. Obviously, a developer should be clear on that, and we should be making clear on that, but obviously mistakes can occur. So I think I don't want to prejudge and just say, well, this X person, you know, that's why I'm saying maybe we should look at this case and see what went wrong and see if we can make sure it helps us in terms of our enforcement and our discharge of conditions procedures in the future to get things resolved better. So I'm a bit, you know, I think we have to be careful of making judgments when we don't have all of the facts there. Councillor Armour.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, I wish to propose a deferment. Now, I don't like deferments. I don't like batting the ball down the road. But in this case, I don't want to delegate approval. I think the decision has to be made by committee. It's such an intrusive feature of the village. I think it has to come back to committee. And I would like planning and developer to discuss all options, if you like, but to include a cladding option as well, because I think that is a way forward. I don't know what the cost would be. It could be prohibitive, I don't know. But I think it should be investigated. So on those grounds, I'll propose deferment.
I'd agree with that. I'd second Councillor Armour on that one. I hear what Councillor Scott's saying, but I think given where we are at with it and it's come here, I think we should see what the final proposed solution is, even if that is just to agree we're comfortable with it at the next meeting, because I think, yeah, we've got this far. Matthias, you want to come in?
Thank you very much, Chair. Good suggestion, Councillor Armour. So, to summarise, you're suggesting you might move to defer. If that is passed, you are deferring it, so the applicant's absolutely clear, to look at cladding solutions for the wall as built with green options around, or a combination of both. And when we talk about cladding, you're talking about a stone solution. Is that where a real stone solution? So in effect, a slip solution, which is half a brick stone drilled onto the front, which works effectively, or actually a whole stone solution in front of it. That might need AIP approval. That might take us a bit longer, depending. So we'll go away and do that. The applicants here, that will include engaging with ward councillors on design options. If we get agreement, we will then bring it back here for a final level of approval. That's what you're saying us to do?
Yeah.
And we'll try and do it within 1 or 2 committee cycles so it doesn't drag on.
Yeah, Councillor Armour.
Yeah, just for clarification, I'm not prescribing what type of facing should be. I'm not an expert. That I think is a matter for the planners, essentially.
High quality is perhaps what you want to
Well,
achieve.
I want good quality. It looks very, very shoddy at the moment.
Okay.
I want good quality and I want something that will last. Artificial stone very often does fade away and looks awful after 5-6 years.
So it might be a natural
Well, I
material.
personally would prefer natural, but I don't want to be prescriptive.
Okay, that's
I
fine.
want something that's suitable.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that, and I think the reason why I was saying bring it back to the committee is because after the discussions, the applicant might say, well, actually, we'd just like you to decision on this decision, and we don't want that to be just delegated. I think it's right that it comes back here. Councillor Scott?
Yeah, I'm listening to what you're saying about the deferral, but I want to be absolutely clear. There'll have to be feasibility studies to see if that structure can have anything drilled into it to hold on to this cladding and everything, so it's not a simple solution. It's going to be a long drawn out one, I think. It's not going to happen overnight because you're going to have a lot, and there's very little land to work with. And one of the things that was really interesting, Highways approved this. So it's like 2 departments not communicating. So, yeah, so I'm not blaming. Officers all work, and they've worked tirelessly on this. But what I'm saying is we've got to find a solution. If it's defer and bring it back and then we have oversight, I'm happy with that. But I do want that moss element, a greener environmental thing on that, and not just go with the cladding just in case it's ineffective or it can't take place. Because I think you'll find you can't.
Mr. Pond, you've got your hand up. Is there something specific? Because you're not a member of the committee, so I'm not really supposed to bring you unless it's something really important.
It was only to offer some commentary back on some of the valid points that have been raised, if I may.
I think... Go on then.
Yep, thank you. So in terms of the cladding solution, obviously we would need to work in within the parameters of what will be permitted by highways, as Councillor Scott already noted, that we are constrained by that, and we will work into an approved solution anyway. In terms of if we were to apply anything to the face of that wall, you could arguably suggest it would become even more imposing than what it is, and I'm just nervous that if you go down that route, you may end up with something that, and if we suggest that we go down that route, and it's absolutely nothing to do with cost. We're trying to get a solution here, and we will work absolutely with you to do whatever we need to do. I'm just nervous that we do something that ultimately, it looks different in person than what it would do in drawing. I'm just nervous that you would get there. I think the moss idea, if that's something that we could explore, would could potentially work, but I don't know. Just the final point is, in terms of there's been some commentary on natural stone that, for the avoidance of doubt, natural stone wasn't specified for this project at all, and indeed the surrounding and adjacent housing schemes and the industrial unit opposite don't have natural stone. The only natural stone in the surrounding area is a very, very small dwarf wall that's in front of the pub, which if you look at it, it's black now. So nervousness about tinting and how that may fail, it is black, you can't see it. So again, I reiterate, we absolutely want to work with you, Chair and Committee, but we just need to be mindful of the constraints within which we can do that.
Yeah, I think what the point we're making here is, I understand what you've said. We're not prescribing a solution. We're having a discussion about options. So we're not saying that you're right, there may be some options that are totally unfeasible. I think that's, and it might be that we look into this a little bit further and come back and say there's no better option, right? I understand that. That's why I'm saying let's look at those options and then come back. I think at the moment what we're saying is some of the options that are being suggested haven't necessarily been considered, and we would like to do that to see if we can improve the insights. Natasha, you want to come back before we...
I just want to reinforce the point that Councillor Smage made on behalf of her community. That's where it's based. They live there. The developer lives there as well too, which is great. But let's ensure that the community see what the options are, and then there's a combination of trying to get a consensus, even if it wasn't what that people hoped would be there physically, the appearance is right. So we will work with members through that process locally so that you, when you get it back, you have hopefully something that the community is comfortable with, or maybe better than that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so we've had quite a long discussion on that. I'm going to hand over to Sheila. So Councillor Amber has suggested deferral, and I've seconded that, and Sheila has just drafted a resolution she's going to read out, so just check we're all comfortable with the reason for deferral, okay?
That the application be deferred to a future meeting, and that the Head of Planning and Development be asked to negotiate with the applicant, including engagement with ward councillors, on other options such as cladding and green options to achieve a more acceptable, high-quality solution in terms of the visual impact of the wall. Excuse me. Are members happy with that?
Councillor Scott?
Can I be clear, when you talk about green options, I'm not talking about trees because of the height of this wall. I'm talking about moss elements to cover the wall.
Okay, we've got moss, added moss. Yeah.
Yeah, for example.
Okay, so we've added, for example, moss, yeah? Okay, you've got your moss in there. Is everybody okay with that? Councillor Amber, you second that? Okay. So we'll vote on that basis for deferral on those grounds, Sheila.
Councillor Sokol?
For.
Councillor Scott?
For.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Lee Richards? For. Councillor Armour?
For.
Councillor Homewood?
For.
That's carried unanimous, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's the end of the meeting. We've
Thank you.
dealt with all the items, so thanks for coming, and see you all next time.